background that is relevant. Sorry, I will not say this crime because my Palestinian feelings aren't crime. They are strong. The part of my background that's relevant is my grandpa fought in the Navy. He put up an American flag every 4th of July. And I miss him, but part of me is glad that he's not alive to feel so disappointed in the country he fought for.
Hello everyone, my name is Thayer Ahmad. I'm an emergency medicine physician based in Chicago. And I'm a Palestinian American who was in Gaza earlier this year and was turned away in May. I was born in Chicago. I was born at the county hospital, not too far from here. I grew up in Little Palestine, Bridgeview, Illinois, surrounded by the largest Palestinian diaspora in the United States. And to say that I'm surprised by the decisions that have been made with respect to silencing and censoring Palestinians, it wouldn't be true. Am I disappointed? I am disappointed. I'm disappointed because I think of my time in Gaza and the people that I interacted with. And I cannot believe that we've gotten to the point where one party uses the word Palestinian as an insult.
Can you go share with
Donald Trump said Chuck Schumer is like a Palestinian. Biden is like a Palestinian, like it's some insult that you can fling around. Like that's the word that you can use to put somebody down. And then another party, rather than recognize Palestinians and lift them up, chooses to silence and censor them. For what? What is so bad about having a Palestinian American share the stage of the DNC? Why is that so controversial? Is it because their words may be too powerful or people may see them as human beings? Every single Palestinian American will tell you the stories of dehumanization. These two-dimensional figures or characters that were portrayed as angry, violent, people who aren't American. Every single person has some of these stories. But I'll tell you what, this rejection, not having a speaker at the DNC, it's not a humiliation. I view it as a badge of honor because our words are so powerful that people actively try to prevent us from speaking. Our stories are so powerful that it scares people from what the power that it may have, how it may change people's feelings. I want to mention, why shouldn't we hear about Reem, the soul of my soul, who was killed in the last 10 months? And her grandfather, because their home had been bombed, the only thing that he could take as a memory of her is the earring that she had. Why shouldn't we hear about Salma, the daughter of a photographer for UNRWA, who was fleeing from Gaza City to the south as they were told to flee, and she was shot in the neck, and her father had to watch her jump up and down in pain. Like so many of us see when kids hurt themselves, they jump up and down in pain, except those were her final moments. Her dad had to witness that. Why shouldn't we hear about him? Why shouldn't we hear about her and her final moments in the car? Everybody should know their stories. It's an absolute loss to humanity and to the world that we can't hear their stories. And I promise the people who made the decision not to have a Palestinian American on the stage, it's your loss for not having them there. It's your loss for not allowing them to speak. I promise you, it is your loss. Every single person in the Gaza Strip has been stripped from their homes. They've been stripped of food, left to starve. They've been stripped of everything, their education. They can't even get an education. They can't go to work. They're not getting paid, but they've not been stripped of their dignity. And the DNC is not going to strip us of our dignity either. The decision not to let us speak is not going to strip us of our dignity. We will hold our heads high because we are Palestinian. And everybody that stands with us should hold their heads up high as well. The last couple of things that I just want to mention, the last two things I really want to mention, is anytime there's an opportunity to say what's right, or to step up and make the right call, it's always going to be difficult, and it's always going to be challenging. But I will say this, if you're not going to stand up and make that decision, and you're not going to stand up for what's right, and you're not going to make the decision to move forward and be morally consistent or have a principled approach, then know that you're a coward and that we will be here to make sure that you understand that you're a coward and that you'll be challenged on that and you'll have to answer for that. Finally, to all of my colleagues in Gaza who I got to work alongside at Nasser Hospital, I watched them show up every single day of work not being paid, working 24-hour shifts, coming from their tents where they were displaced, having to treat their community with no medicine, with no clean bed sheets, with no beds. They had to walk through the hallways that were riddled with displaced Palestinians, and they did it incredibly, heroically. Their stories deserve to be told. More than 500 of them have been killed in the last 10 months. More than 200 of them have been abducted. All of them are working under impossible conditions. They deserve to have a voice. They deserve to have their story told. And they deserve for somebody to do something about what's happening to them. It's wrong, plain and simple. Who cares what background you have, what religion you follow, what party you belong to? What's happening to them is wrong. It's wrong, plain and clear. And that is the only reason I can come up with that we would be prevented from having a Palestinian American share their stories is because you don't want to be confronted with the truth that it is wrong and that we've got our hands tied behind our backs, not willing to extend a helping hand and stop what's taking place. I'm somebody who, growing up, remember going to protests, whether it was the Iraq War, the Afghanistan War, the genocide in Bosnia, what was happening in Sudan. I remember going to these protests, and I remember being alongside other people who were speaking up, and I remember how hard it was then. And I want to say that we stand collectively, shoulder to shoulder, and that we're all fighting the same fight. I'm Palestinian, but all of us in this room here right now are Palestinian as well. Everybody holding up a sign, everybody who's willing to communicate the story. So I thank you on behalf of my people, and I hope that my brothers and sisters who are there, who would be much more eloquent than I could be, I hope that they get a chance to tell their story, because I know that it will move people, and I know that's the least that they deserve. Thank you.
Thank you all again for being here. My name is Dr. Tammy Aboughanaim. I'm an emergency physician based in Chicago. I was born and raised in this city. I am intimately tied to all of the social evils of this city. I, as an emergency physician, am witness every single day on shift to the problems of homelessness, to the problems of defunding mental health, to the problems of reproductive justice, because they arrive at my front door. Every single day in Chicago, I combat these issues. And I can tell you, having been to Gaza twice now, and having returned just 4 days ago, that these evils, these social problems and issues that we encounter in Chicago have repercussions and reverberations across the ocean. And that what happens here happens there, and what happens there can absolutely happen here. Just this morning, I was in contact with my colleagues at Al-Aqsa Hospital. I was in Al-Aqsa Hospital in March of this year, where I stood alongside of my colleagues and helped them treat patients as they came to the emergency department. They are frantic right now. They are afraid, they are terrified, and they are so tired. They have been doing this for 10, going on 11 months. As Dr. Ahmed said, they are unpaid. They show up for their patients because they know that nobody else is going to do this job. Because for 10 months, they have been repeatedly disappointed by the international community, and specifically they have been disappointed by this administration and their blatant disregard for Palestinian lives. And this disregard is showcased over and over and over again. It is showcased every single time Joe Biden signs off on an arms package to Israel. It is showcased every single time we hear hollow words from Kamala Harris about how she is sympathetic or empathetic and she really feels for Palestinians. No, you do not. If you felt for Palestinians, you would not continue to send the weapons that are killing them. If you felt for Palestinians, you would not stand when a war criminal comes and speaks to your Congress. If you felt for Palestinians, you would feel the pain of every single doctor and nurse that has to pull American-made shrapnel from the bodies of their children. You do not feel for Palestinians. You have made this very clear all week. You would like us, you would like those of us who support Palestinians, and I am not Palestinian either, as Dr. Tanya Hassan has mentioned. You do not feel for Palestinians if you can say to our faces that your testimony and your witnessing of war crimes does not matter because we are going to continue to pursue our foreign policy as scheduled. I feel so deeply for my colleagues in Gaza right now because they are afraid that the last remaining hospitals are going to be raided by Israeli forces. And in this pattern that Israel has perpetuated over the last 10 months of raiding hospitals, of killing doctors, of abducting doctors, of torturing doctors and nurses and healthcare workers. In my last 3 weeks at Nasser Hospital, I sat down with many of my colleagues, and they have told me horrifying stories of how they were targeted specifically for being healthcare workers. At Al-Shifa Hospital, during the very final day of their evacuation, healthcare workers were pulled aside because they were wearing scrubs. They were identified as healthcare workers. They were abducted, they were tortured, and ultimately released, with no explanation for the horrors that they had just endured. There is no explanation. There cannot ever be an explanation for this. There is no justification for what is going on in Gaza right now. There is no justification for American support of Israeli war crimes and genocide that is being perpetuated in Gaza right now. I share with you the stories of my colleagues because they cannot be here. They deserve to live in safety. They deserve to be here and address you all, and someday they will be able to do that. But it is my fear that that day will come too late, and that any moment now, I will receive a phone call telling me that all of my colleagues are dead. That these brave souls who are doing this selflessly, at the risk of their lives, and at the risk of their families' lives, will have been killed by Israel for doing their job, for being humanitarians, for being doctors and nurses. I live in dread every single day of hearing of the deaths of the doctors and nurses that I have worked with. It is frustrating to me as an American citizen that I have to come here over and over and over again to share their pain and to share my pain. That we have to display this over and over in an attempt to humanize Palestinians. Palestinian human rights matter because they are human. They are worth defending. Palestinians are worth saving. Kamala Harris does not seem to agree. Joe Biden does not seem to agree. And to that I say, fine. You will lay in the bed that you made. Enough is enough. This is an emergency. It is the emergency of our time. And if you refuse to act in an emergency that tells us everything that we need to know, you do not stand with us. And if you do not stand with us, you will lay in the bed you made. Everything that you do has consequences. It is not too late to reverse course. You can do the right thing. It is never easy to do the right thing, but it is always obvious what the right thing is. I pray that we do not have to keep doing this. I do not want to be here. My colleagues do not want to be here. We would rather be in Gaza helping the patients, helping our colleagues, relieving their suffering. We would rather be in our emergency departments in Chicago or our pediatric ICUs. I do not want to have to do this, but I do this because I need to give a voice to my colleagues, to my Palestinian colleagues. I hope that that resonates with the Democratic Party, with the political class, before it is too late. Thank you.
The next three speakers are Tariq Abash, Georgia State Representative Ruwa Rahman, and Jim Zachary. I ask for speakers to keep their remarks concise going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Willie. Thanks, Uncommitted. I guess I can go with this too. It's been an emotional week, so I'm going to stick to some short remarks. But I'm going to speak both as a Palestinian and as an American. We're a country that is made of people, for the people, by the people. Our institutions are meant to represent each of us, to uphold the American values for peace and justice for all, the values that we were raised with. And to do that, at a minimum, we must maintain the integrity of our laws. We've heard for 3 days now at the Democratic National Convention the repeated talking points about the dangers of Donald Trump, his felony counts, his disregard for the law, and how this party is a big tent for all Americans. But how can we be expected as Palestinians, as people of integrity, of humanity, to be able to support a candidate who claims to support the rule of law, but cannot actually enforce our own damn laws when it comes to the transfer of our weapons, when it comes to ensuring the safety and security of civilians, when it comes to ensuring that civilians and doctors and humanitarian aid workers can distribute the aid needed safely and effectively. We have to be here to hold Democrats accountable because we believe that this party, which many of us have found a political home in for generations, has the capacity to do better, must do better. Truthfully, the indignity and the erasure of Palestinians in our country and in this party throughout this entire week will not be forgotten. I know that my brother Abbas right now is waiting for a call for us to be able to share the Palestinian story on the convention stage. It's an important call, but many of us continue waiting for calls from our loved ones, from our friends and our families, every morning and every night, to make sure that they're still safe, to make sure that they're still alive, that they can access food and water. And unfortunately, so many of them are not safe right now. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for being here. My name is Ruwa Rahman. I'm a Georgia State representative from House District 97. I'm also an elected Palestinian. Please forgive me. We are all running on very little sleep after sitting outside in the cold, and I promise. But I want to make a few things clear. As you have heard time and time and time again, the uncommitted leaders have been in negotiations every day of this convention. And every day, what we were told was, it's not enough. Give us another name, give us another name, give us another name. And when I said I was honored to be considered, I really meant it. But I want to be clear, the reason I was even put forward is because the idea was, how could an elected official from a swing state not make it through? That was the calculation. The question was that if nobody else, not doctors, not Palestinians who've lost family members, not the Palestinian elected in Chicago, if none of those people could make it through, surely somebody from a swing state would be enough. Surely somebody who cares about preventing Donald Trump from winning this November would be enough. Surely somebody who the community rallied behind would be enough. But the reality is that last night, we were all incredibly hopeful. To the point that we started preparing. We were like, let's just make sure if we get the okay, we are ready to go. We knew that we would, we knew that from that stage we would have an opportunity to share the Palestinian story. The intention was not to try to push the envelope. The intention was not to be disruptive. The intention was literally to tell a story. And by the way, I am somebody who, as soon as President Biden withdrew, I expressed cautious optimism. And I said, I am looking to see what Vice President Harris will commit to, because I really want to endorse her. And I've said this time and time and time again, I am trying to get my community to where I am as an elected official who's been doing this for 10 years and understands the political calculations we all have to make. That is why we are here, for the record. We are trying to bridge the gap between the voters that we know that we need in key swing states in these tiny margins and where the campaign is. We would not be working this hard if we did not want Vice President Harris to succeed. I want to be clear. The goal of this campaign is to stop the bombs. It's to save lives. It's to do it in a way that works within the party. It's to do it in a way that is not enabling the rise of Trump, because we all feel the impact of Trump presidency. I'm willing to bet every single person in this room was touched in some way by his presidency in the most negative way possible. We know the threat and we know it is serious. And it is not about just me. It is about the principle of it. We came here asking for specific policy decisions. That is what we came here for. And what we are saying is, at least give us something symbolic, something to show to our communities that the party is willing to listen, that the party that for the past 3 days has said, we are building a large tent, a tent large enough to include the Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, the previous Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, who oversaw the banning of abortions in my state, who the last bill in his last term was an anti-trans bill, where he silenced a state senator whose kid was trans. Our party put him on that stage, and then our party on the same day said, well, sorry, you're just a bridge too far for our tent. A bridge too far after I was willing to go up there and make the case for us. Because the reality of the situation is that our party continues to include people like us. But our party cannot keep benefiting off the work of us without our voices. Everyone you see in this room is an organizer and somebody who contributes to their community. We are the ones that turn voters out. We are the ones that have been doing this work. We are the ones who turn people out year after year after year, because we recognize that progress is slow and we just have to keep it consistent. But there's an urgency of people dying right now. And we are trying to do our best to work within the limitations that we have. Again, this is a symbolic, bare minimum ask. And I want to be clear, when we were told that no is a good sign, we prepared. Right? The reason I personally wrote my remarks is because I didn't want anybody to say that we were not ready when we got the okay. There is absolutely no reason for this kind of position. We have an opportunity to truly unite our party. We should be taking it. Thank you.
And I'm president of the Arab American Institute, and actually, I'm the last person to have spoken about Palestinian rights from the podium of the Democratic Party. That was 1988. That was the last time that issue was addressed. And I got there because I was a senior advisor with the Reverend Jesse Jackson, and we had a minority plank on Palestine. And I want to tell you, I did it. We had 1,400 delegates carrying Palestine lids and 2 states for 2 people signs on the floor of the convention. And it was very powerful. I rode the Jackson wave as a member of the Democratic National Committee in 1988. And after that, the last day of the convention, I was asked to withdraw from the DNC. They said it would be too controversial. The chair of the party, Ron Brown, said, I'll make it up to you. And he did. He came to Arab American events, recognized the role of our community as a party, reappointed me a few years later. But the sting of that stayed with me, and what really got me was, and this is what I want to tell you, right after I did it, Reverend Jackson said, why did you do it? I said, I didn't want a bullseye on my back. And he said, man, you should never quit. Never quit. He said, because that's exactly what they want you to do. They want you to quit. What they're afraid of is that you'll stick around and fight. And so I stuck around and fought. And we continued to fight. And yes, we have endured enormous pain. And yes, we have endured insults. And yes, we've not made the progress that we should make. And we're seeing this unfold here today. If I were to leave this room with any slogan, it wouldn't be not another bomb. It would be make the damn call. That's what I tell them. Just make the damn call. You know why? Because there isn't a single vote that will be lost if a compassionate Palestinian speaker takes the podium of the convention. Not a single vote will be lost, but there will be votes gained. And having made the decision that they've made, there's not a single vote that they'll gain. There's going to be some votes that they'll lose. There's nobody out there in the pro-Israel community who's going to say, well, God bless the Democrats, they're silencing Palestine. Because those folks are already voting for Donald Trump. I mean, think about the times that this issue has even been obliquely mentioned at the convention. It got cheers. It got cheers. The base of our party is very clear about this. So what I call it the decision that they've made, or the decision that they've fallen, I don't even know how it got made. I wouldn't put this on the candidate. I know how these things work. Who knows? I have no idea how this process came. But what I do know is that it is an unforced error. Coach Waltz, this is an unforced error. That's how you talk about it in sports. You didn't have to do it. It was stupid. Undo it. Make the damn call. Palestinian voices need to be heard. Look, I went to this convention. I've been at this convention. I've been at all these conventions. They've got everybody, every conceivable combination of identities was on that stage speaking. What the hell's wrong with an Arab American? We're people. Why in particular now not a Palestinian American? We're people. I told them at the time when I was testifying before the Platform Committee, and they had that line in there, like they did in 2020, equal worth of Palestinian and Israeli lives. Just don't put something in there gratuitous. If you don't mean it, don't put it in. Right now we got 40,000, at least 40,000 Palestinian dead. And yes, over 1,000 Israeli dead. Equal worth? If I were looking at that on the money exchange market, that's like 1 to 40. That's not equal worth, right? We can't devalue human life that much and ignore it that much and claim to hold equal worth. So, make the damn call. Make the damn call. We deserve it, and you will benefit from it if you make the damn call, because you will win votes and lose none. Thank you. These guys, this is what my Uncle Fred used to call the young generator. These guys have done such amazing work that I am going now off into my sunset years, feeling just enormously gratified and just so comfortable that the leadership of this movement has passed to folks who not only are doing the hard work, but with a sense of dignity and a sense of understanding of real politics. And I just love it. I just love listening to Waleed and Abbas and Layla and Lexi. These folks get it, and so we're in good stead moving forward. Make the damn call.
I just want to say that our movement would not be anywhere near where it is without Jim Zogby and Jesse Jackson. Next, we'll hear from Illinois State Representative Will Guzzardi and Illinois State Senator Robert Peters.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Will Guzzardi. I'm a state representative. I'm a state representative from the 39th district here in Illinois on the northwest side of Chicago. I'm a Jewish elected official, and I'm an elected official who has been calling for a ceasefire, an end to this horrible conflict, who continues to call for an end to this conflict, and who believes that not another U.S.-made bomb should fall on the heads of a Palestinian family. I had prepared remarks for today about my experience on this issue and my perspectives on it, but I'm not going to give those remarks now. I'll instead just briefly say my voice is not the voice that needs to be heard today. We need to hear a Palestinian voice, not just here on the floor of the Democratic National Convention. Whether it's Dr. Haj Hassan or Representative Rahman or my dear colleague from the Chicago area, Representative Abdel Nasser Rashid, who is not able to be here with us, but is with us all in spirit. There's so many voices that it could be on that stage, sharing the story. And just being in this room with you all today, hearing these stories is an undeniable moral clarion call to justice. When you hear the stories of what's happening in Gaza, you cannot but insist that American policy change. You are forced to recognize that we have denied the humanity of Palestinian people for far too long. You're forced to shift your perspective on this topic if it's not there yet, right? And that's what the American people deserve to hear from the convention stage. They, as was said earlier, our friends, our neighbors, our loved ones deserve the moral call to action that the stories of Palestinians and Palestinian Americans will bring. That space must be made, and I believe that the voices of the people in this room have the power to change the world. I sincerely believe that. I know it is a grim and sad and painful moment, and there's so much emotion in this room. Someone earlier said it's grief, it's pain, it's trauma. It's 10 months, it's 20 years, it's 75 years, it's centuries, millennia. It's trauma that we're all carrying with us in this room today. And I have seen the power of the organizers in this room, the organizers in this community, the organizers around this country, to force policy shifts from our leaders. And I know that if we continue to stand together, if we continue to let this clarion call be heard, if we continue to believe that justice will be done and fight for it every inch, we are going to make peace and justice and love and compassion a reality. So I, as a Jewish elected official, on behalf of many Jewish elected officials, many Jewish people in Chicago and around the country and around the world, we stand with the cause of Palestinian human rights. We are with you today. We will be with you tomorrow. We will be with you until peace is won. Thank you very much.
Why are we kowtowing to a right-wing element that only cares about getting right-wing electeds in office in Hungary, in France, Argentina, and of course here in the United States of America? The Democratic Party should not be standing with such an illiberal group of people who don't even care about their own citizens, let alone the people next to them. It is important for this party to make sure that they have a Palestinian voice on that stage. The talk we heard all the time was that this is going to be 1968, but instead it was 1964. And what we are seeing are folks recreating the magical organizing of Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker. And so the real thing that I want to say to everybody, to all the folks who have been standing on the sidelines, to folks who are trying to push people back, is organizing, oftentimes the tactics get critiqued. There's no such thing as a perfect tactic to people. But what I do know is that when you organize and then you win, people don't laugh anymore. In fact, they tell their grandkids, I was there too. I marched that bridge in Selma. I was there too. Well, here's an opportunity. It is in this convention, in this moment, that every Democrat can tell their kid they were there too. So this isn't our 68, this is our 1964, to be a little bit of a history nerd. We're in a civil rights moment, and it's time to catch up. This is a time for solidarity. Solidarity across borders, across relationships, across people. We need that now more than ever. Thank you.
Next, we'll have Lily Greenberg Call.
Hi, everyone. I'm really tired right now because I was at the United Center until sunrise this morning with my Palestinian brothers and sisters, asking why, I'm also losing my voice because of that, asking why our very simple demand to have a Palestinian American on stage tonight was denied. It is striking to me that the DNC does not seem to understand a simple fact, that Jews and Palestinians are holding each other's pain right now. That we want so badly to be able to love each other, and to love each other in public. That this is our fight too. That Palestinian liberation is Jewish liberation. And fighting for liberation is what Jews do across time and history. We fight, we question authority. This is nothing new. This is what we have always, always done. And a ceasefire is the only way to bring back hostages alive. A regional war endangers everyone. A continued genocide of Palestinians is a blight on all of our collective humanity, because never again means if it can happen to them, it can happen to any of us. I moved across the country for Kamala in 2020 because I believed that she would choose justice and equality. And I resigned from the Biden administration in May of this year because I could no longer represent the administration as they were making my community the face of a war machine and allowing the endless slaughter of Palestinians to continue with no accountability. But I want Kamala to prove that 2020 version of me right. I want her to follow U.S. law and stop sending Israel weapons that are being used to kill children. Because we should not be paying for weapons that are killing children. I know that. You know that. Democratic voters know that. 86% of Democratic Party voters know that. The administration's position is a minority position. Because who is this current policy even for? It's not for any of us. It's harming Palestinians, and it does not keep Jews safe. What we, the people, need is an arms embargo. We need accountability. We need Kamala to make history, not just as the first female president, but as the U.S. president who changed the status quo of violence against Palestinians and created a thriving future in the land for Palestinians and Israelis. We need a Palestinian American on that stage tonight. Thank you.
Someone need these manual Reamer buttons very quickly. The next speakers will be Maurice Mitchell from Working Families Party, Amara Enya from Movement for Black Lives, and Conscious Lee.
Thank you, Ali. Good morning, my name is Maurice Mitchell. I'm the National Director of the Working Families Party. I'm proud to be standing here in solidarity with our allies and our family at the Uncommitted and Not Another Bomb movements. The Working Families Party is committed to the defeat of the global authoritarian right-wing movement sweeping across the globe. We're committed to defeating it in Israel and Palestine, where the Netanyahu government has killed more than 40,000 men, women, children, and displaced or starved millions more. That's why we're 10 toes down behind the call for a ceasefire and an arms embargo. We are also every bit as committed to defeating the right-wing movements that are expressed here in the United States. Donald Trump and his MAGA cultists have made their plans known. They want to lock migrants in detention centers, criminalize protest, and undermine the foundations of our democracy. And it's no secret that Donald Trump is the preferred candidate of Bibi Netanyahu. And it's no secret as to why MAGA wants to supercharge the right-wing Israeli government's campaign of ethnic cleansing in Gaza. and ensure the Palestinians displaced can never come back. Also, that they can build beachfront homes and condos where their homes used to be. We're all here because we understand the stakes. At the Working Families Party, we have decided to align ourselves with the Harris Walls campaign in order to defeat Donald Trump. However, we are gravely concerned that they are making a mistake by denying the voices of Palestinian Americans who desperately want to participate. Campaigns are fundamentally about building coalitions, and to build a winning coalition, you need to make sure all the constituent parts of that coalition feel seen and are heard. Last night, we heard from the family of an Israeli hostage. It was powerful, and as a father, my heart aches for that family. Just as the families of Israeli hostages should have the right to speak at the DNC, so should the families of Palestinians who have seen their homes, loved ones, and communities destroyed. Eviscerated, destroyed, eliminated. Whatever language you want to use, all life, all children, all families, all communities are sacred, and it should be reflected at the DNC stage. I want to be completely candid. I am weary and disappointed in the decision made last night, but I am thankful for this new day, because in every new moment, there's a moment of transformation, because it means that whatever mistakes were made yesterday, they can be corrected today. And I demand this bare minimum. I can't even believe I'm here, demanding this bare minimum request. There are requests for policy demands, and there's simply a request for a human being to stand for a few minutes to express their story. Folks like Layla, Abbas, and the other leaders in the Uncommitted movement, and many of our siblings in this fight, are trying to help the Democratic Party, are trying to help VP Harris and Governor Walz by ensuring their campaign is on the right side of history and has a coherent pro-democracy position here and abroad. They want to ensure the Palestinian Americans here in Cook County, in Michigan, in Minnesota, in Georgia, all around the country and all around the world, see themselves in this campaign. Prioritizing the demands of those fighting for the rights of those living under constant bombardment and violence is not only what's right, it's also what Americans are asking. The majority of Americans are asking for this. This is a majoritarian position. Americans want a ceasefire. Americans want an arms embargo. Democrats want a ceasefire. Democrats want an arms embargo. Democrats see the lives of Palestinians, and all they want that is to be reflected, simply reflected in the policies and the platform and in the program of the Democratic Party. To my Palestinian brothers and sisters, do not take this moment as a humiliation. The only people who are being humiliated are the people who perhaps are taking their cues on something as small as a run of show from a totally discredited right-wing authoritarian abroad. Those are the only people who should bow their heads. You should raise your heads in pride. I hope that that's not the case, that they're not taking their cues from a totally discredited authoritarian, and they take their cues from the heartbeat of this party. Because while this is a temporary setback, we should all be reminded that this is what the majority of Americans and the majority of people around the world are asking for. And also, by the way, it simply is recognizing current U.S. law, current international law, and basic standards of human rights. We believe this moment is an opportunity for the Harris-Walz campaign to rebuild the coalition that defeated Donald Trump in 2020. Vice President Harris has shown she can listen, and she can hear from the folks in the Uncommitted movement. Now she needs to act and let the nation know, and let the nation hear the folks who she's been listening to as well. And I must tell you, it was surreal. It was surreal to witness chants of "When we fight, we win," echoing from the convention center. when people were amassing outside the convention center in a sit-in, fighting and demanding simply that their voices are heard. But fight indeed, because the fight in me is stronger today. And we need to continue to fight, because when we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. We win. When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. And we shall win. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Amara Enya, and I'm here wearing a few hats, but I serve as policy director for the Movement for Black Lives, standing in solidarity with our people, our Palestinian siblings, our Palestinian family, in this moment. I also stand here as a human being. And it feels somehow that that needs to be said. Because ultimately we are talking about human beings. We are talking about humanity. I also stand here as a resident of the West Side of Chicago, in what I believe to be the greatest and most beautiful city in the world. And yet this week has been fraught with contradictions. It's been challenging, to say the least, because this has been a week of parties. A lot of champagne bottles have been opened. A lot of streamers and balloons have been strewn about. A lot of celebrating has taken place, and yet, at the same time, we're here. Because we know that bombs are still being dropped, that our government is still paying for and financing genocide. And yet every night, you see a stadium full of folks celebrating. What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human in this moment? Those contradictions that I, and I'm sure many of you have witnessed this week, are actually historical. I'm perhaps obviously not Palestinian, but I am Black, and live in a country where Black folks still have to assert that their lives matter. That the very same demands, the very same narrative that we are hearing about Palestinians have been said for generations about Black folks. We still have to make the assertion. What does that tell us about humanity? What does that tell us about the leadership in this country and the values that have been put forth on these last few days here in this great city, that we're making the same demands? Historically, our people have stood in solidarity because we recognize that what we are facing is not exclusive to one particular group or people, that it requires us to unite across borders, across languages, across ethnicities. That the war machine that is currently sending bombs to Gaza is the same that has expanded its footprint on the continent of Africa via AFRICOM. It's the same kind of leadership that has been a destabilizing force in places like Haiti, in Congo, in Sudan. That the war machine that our tax dollars are supporting, the trillions of dollars, is financing genocide while we say that we cannot afford money for education, we can't afford access to health care, to housing. The demand for reparations is constantly put aside. That same war machine is continuing on. But the celebrations are still happening. What does that tell us about our humanity? Our folks in our most trying moments have built relationships in uprisings in Ferguson, when our people were being tear gassed. It was our Palestinian siblings who offered recommendations on how we keep ourselves safe. That's not an isolated incident. We can go back to the Black Panther Party and the recognition for multi-racial solidarity. Why? Because we have to ask, what world are we trying to build? Because at its core, that is what this is about. That is what this moment is about. It is about a shared humanity that we claim we believe in. And whether or not the leadership that is moving into the corridors of power actually embody the values that they claim to have. Every generation requires a moral compass. Every generation requires those who are willing to speak truth to power, who are willing to be inconvenienced, because they recognize a responsibility to build a world that is just. Our ancestors have understood that. They are the shoulders upon which we stand. This coalition understands that. And it is why we persist. The contradictions that we face, we are tasked with calling them out. I can love my city, and as a resident of the West Side, I can still call out the disparity and the injustice that I witness every day. I can still speak truth to power. We can love this country, and therefore we have a responsibility to call out the hypocrisy when we see it, to call out injustice when we witness it, regardless of whether it affects us directly. Why? Because at some point it will, if we do not call it out. That is why we are here today. Not another bomb, an arms embargo, Palestinian lives matter, Black lives matter. Our humanity matters and must be centered. And if on this stage, the biggest stage in the world right now, the Democratic Party is unable to make even the gesture, then we must ask even then, where is their humanity? Are these the folks that we should be in a stadium celebrating and applauding? Finally, in a few short hours, once the last bottles of champagne have been poured and the last streamers have fallen, and folks start to go back to their homes, and the dust settles, and the celebrations are more muted, and in this social media age, people will forget very quickly and move on to the next trend on TikTok or whatever. And people, human beings, will still be dying. People in Gaza will still be getting killed. Countries on the continent will still be getting destabilized. The U.S. war machine and the goals of imperialism will still be attempting to persist. And it will require us, when we leave here, to persist. But this is not rhetoric. This is not a trend. It's not saltiness either, because some of us are not down for the celebrations. It is standing on our values. It is embodying our values as human beings who deserve to live, to self-actualize, and to thrive wherever we are, whomever we are, whatever language we speak, whatever our socioeconomic background, frankly, whatever political party we adhere to. If we say we are humans, that is what we must carry forward, and it is the challenge that we must continue to put forth for whomever occupies the White House in a few short months. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Conscious Lee, and I'm pissed off. There are a lot of nostalgic black sentiments that's being incorporated here at the DNC, and I feel some type of way about it. The first words of the Black National Anthem is lift every voice and sing. The DNC is going to incorporate a lot of black traditional sentiments into this thing. VP Harris chose a Beyonce song that starts with freedom, freedom, freedom for who? Freedom for Palestinian voices to be on stage? No. Right now, when I go into the stadium, I see we're going to be saving democracy, we're going to be saving diversity, we're going to be saving inclusion. Inclusion food. Democracy food. Not democracy for the Palestinians. Right now, we have been sold the boogeyman to Project 2025. Everything they telling us through fear in Project 2025 is currently happening to Palestinians right now. So for me, it becomes simple. The DNC got to choose. Do you care more about women, or do you care more about silencing Palestinian voices? It's really that simple. As an American, I got family members that's right now sitting in jail because they were proximity to a crime. The judge looked at my cousin and said, hey, listen, you, when the crime was being committed, you were in proximity. You didn't stop the commission of this crime being committed. Therefore, you are an accessory to crime. My boy waiting on a commissary and a release date right now. So I don't get how the United States federal government and any entity is able to chastise black folks on the local level for not abiding by the law. And then you break the law. Right now, we saying, keep on saying it. Nobody is above the law. Nobody is above the law. International law don't matter. Right now, we're trying to rally Americans to fight against a right-wing government, a right-wing threat in America, and you supporting one foreign? The hypocrisy of democracy is what it sounds like to me. When we chastising Donald Trump for lying to our faces and you saying that you don't know what Project 2025 is, but we got you right here and all these receipts and you know what it is, you lying. Okay, let's flip it. If you say you care about democracy and we say the democracy, if you say that this is going to be the party that's opening up a tent, open that tent up. What pissed me off is last night, I'm listening to the great Oprah Winfrey speak. You feel me? Hey, she threw a little shot, J.D. Vance. She said something important though. This is when I got the news that DNC said no. She said, J.D. Vance, we care about Americans. We care about the humanity of our neighbors. That's what she said. She said that if your neighbor house is on fire, we not going to only save the neighbor and the crazy cat lady. She said we're going to save the cat too. But that don't apply to Palestinians. So we can save cats, we can make jokes about cat ladies, but we can't save cats. Hey, to all the Americans watching this that ain't really paying attention, when you decide between paying your water bill or feeding yourself, remember they saying billions of dollars over there? Hey, if you're a black person and you feel like, man, I don't give a damn what the folks doing over there, I can't afford to pay groceries. Hey, listen, there's a trade-off that happens. Black people are disproportionately impacted by getting student loans. The right wing knew that black folks was going to be benefiting from getting them student loans. Hey, and here's what they're giving them. I don't get to get it. I pay my taxes. I pay taxes. A lot of people pay taxes. I don't get why we're fighting for health care. We don't have the budget for health care. We can spend out $10 billion at the end. Black folks been asking reparations for a long time. We told them we don't have the finance, we don't have the budget, but you got a budget to kill Palestinians, though. Right. Just the last thing I'll say, because I really got a lot to say that I can't tell you. I'm really fired up, you know what I'm saying? The last thing I'll say. Right now, we living in history. What's happening right now is going to be written about in the archive. The DNC right now, what y'all doing, y'all not going to be talked about in history very good right now. You cannot take a lot of racial sentiments about uplifting racial diversity at the same time you singling out Palestinian voices and not allowing them to be there. As a black American, I feel some type of way about the magic optimism of this campaign and seeing a black woman to be in a position I ain't never seen a black woman be in before. But I also feel some type of way about a black woman enabling American imperialism. I want to be clear. I'm not saying VP Harris should, I'm not saying no black person should shoulder all the imperialist, no, you feel me? But, like that judge said, hey man, you were president when that crime was being committed. You did not stop the crime. You broke the law. If nobody is above the law, keep that energy. In conclusion, we ain't asking nothing crazy. We're just asking you to say what you say. Be about what you say you're about. Keep that same energy. If you say you're about diversity, then be about diversity. If you say you want to oppose a right-wing government, oppose a right-wing government. Education is elevation. Appreciate y'all.
The next speaker is Muhammad Qadir. I'm excited about this speaker because he hails from a family that was part of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party in 1964.
Thank you, Louis. Good morning, everyone. Apologies for the rapid in my voice, but my name is Muhammad Qadir. I am the policy manager for the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights. We are a political home for those who believe that the freedom for the Palestinian people is integral in the collective liberation of all people. Over the last 24 hours, I joined uncommitted delegates outside of the United Kingdom. I've been awake for over 24 hours now, joining them in their simple demand for a Palestinian to address the floor of the Democratic Convention. Denying a Palestinian the right to speak at the convention is essentially to deny the humanity of Palestinians, whether they're party members, whether they're community members, or whether they're just everyday individuals. But for me, denying a Palestinian that moment in particular is very personal. You see, I'm from the crucible that shaped American democracy that we know today. I'm from the place that forged the civil rights movement, the state of Mississippi. You see, I'm a black Mississippian, and we don't take that very lightly where I'm from. Black Mississippians, like my grandfather's brother, he was one of the first black Mississippians to register to vote during the civil rights movement. He was an advisor to Bob Moses and SNCC, the late Bob Moses. He saw the murders of Emmett Till as a young adult, but he also saw the murders of Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner. During the Freedom Summer that happened 1 month before the 1964 DNC, where at the DNC, black Mississippians were denied a seat at the convention. When Penny Lou Hamer was at the Credential Committee, pleading her case, why she deserved to be there, they looked her in her eyes, the trauma that we've endured as black Mississippians, and told her, no, you will not get your credentials. You will not sit at the convention. Today, 60 years later, the Democratic Party is denying another community, like mine, back home in Mississippi, the right and the privilege to be viewed at this historic national convention, where more than 500,000 voters supported or opposed genocide and supported Palestinian rights. Palestinians around the nation have been told by the Democratic Party that they are essentially not equal. Just in past platforms and conventions did the other communities, like my people in Mississippi in 1964, or like Filipinos in the 1900s, or like other communities that were viewed always as other because they simply were not white. The Democratic Party cannot continue to exclude critical voices and key perspectives that deserve, and to be honest, must be centered and heard, whether it be the platform or from the floor of the convention. That's why Uncommitted's demand is very simple, to hear what we've been through. Because, we're in the great city of Chicago, where unfortunately I have to claim that black Mississippians came up here during the Great Migration, but it's also the home of the largest Palestinian diaspora in the nation. It's where 6-year-old Wadia was murdered in a hate crime as a result of an act of violence that was motivated by Israel's genocide in Gaza. It's where 2 Palestinian American citizens from the Chicago area were abducted in Gaza not too long ago by the Israeli military after they were bombarded. And it's where the black Americans forced the Democratic White House in the 1960s to sign civil rights legislation that outlawed discrimination. Well, if you ask me, it feels like none of that matters to the Democratic Party. We know what's at stake, our communities know what's at stake. That's why many in the Democratic Party support an arms embargo, and that's simply why we're demanding a Palestinian address before the convention. Thank you.
We are now moving to the faith leaders portion of our program. The next 2 speakers are Pastor Michael McBride and Dr. Rami Nashi.
My name is Michael McBride. I am from Oakland, California, and I'm glad to be joined by some comrades. Jesse Jackson said 40 years ago, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, who we honored and who we revere in our tradition, 40 years ago, that our defeats are characterized by the margin of despair and the fracture of our coalition. It is indeed unconscionable to me and to many of us who are faith leaders, particularly in the tradition of the Black church, who stand in solidarity with our Palestinian friends and loved ones, who acknowledge that we often have to hold the pain of so many communities, so many individuals. We hold the pain of the Israeli families and hostages. We hold the pain of the Palestinian communities who are literally suffering a genocide, being streamed on Instagram. I must say that many of our faith leaders, many of them who are mothers and grandmothers, we were compelled to move to collect over 1,000 signatures calling for an immediate ceasefire, the freeing of all hostages, humanitarian aid, and a peaceful resolution. We put that 1,000 signatures out in the New York Times in November, long before many in the country had even spoken out. It is 10 months later. We still don't have a ceasefire. 10 months later. We still don't have the release of all hostages. 10 months later, we still don't have humanitarian aid. 10 months later, we still don't have a peace process. We like to believe that we are part of the Black church prophetic tradition. I must humbly say, if you had listened to us 10 months ago, 9 months ago, 8 months ago, 7 months ago, 6 months, 5 months, 4 months, 3 months ago, we would not be standing here on the last day of the Democratic National Convention trying to fix a problem that could have been solved if you listen to more voices than you're listening today. And so we want to renew our calls for an immediate ceasefire. We want to renew our calls for the release of hostages. We want to renew our calls for humanitarian aid that reaches the level of devastation happening in Palestine. We want to renew our calls for a peaceful process. And now we have more demands. It is unconscionable for us to show up to the Democratic National Convention. The scripture says to rejoice with those who rejoice. We came to rejoice. Right. We came to rejoice because one of our own, who comes out of our tradition, who is a part of our community, one of our own is being elevated to the candidacy as the Democratic nominee. It is worthy to rejoice. But the scripture at the same time also says we must weep with those who weep. How can we rejoice while our Palestinian American friends are weeping? Have we lost our humanity? Have we been swept up in the political theater of this moment? It is not too late to correct course. Now, we've been talking to folks, and I want you to know that this is not over. I want you to know that your voices are being heard. I want you to know that you must keep speaking out. I want you to know that if our tradition of activism has taught us anything, miracles happen when the people keep organizing. And so to my Palestinian friends, our heart breaks with you. We shed similar sincere tears with you. And we are doing everything we can as the Black Church PAC and Black Church faith leaders and comrades to exhaust every back channel we got. The phones are smoking, the text messages are on fire. So don't you stop pushing, because we're pushing as well. There's a song in our tradition we grew up singing that said, "Pass me not, O gentle Savior. Hear my humble cry. While on others thou art calling, do not pass me by." Call on the Democratic Party today. Don't pass this community by. There's no reason to pass this community by. Morally, they deserve to be heard. Politically, their votes will be crucial to defeating fascism that is knocking on the door of our democracy. There is no reason to not let them speak, to not renew the commitments at the highest levels of our government, and to immediately secure a ceasefire. Please, on behalf of the Black Church PAC and all of our leaders that are here, hear our cries. We ought not have to beg for justice to the people who claim to be champions of justice. Give the people justice. If you want peace, there's only one prescription for peace. It's justice. Give our Palestinian loved ones and all of us who've been working in solidarity for the last 10 months and some of us for decades on this issue, give us justice. All power to the people. Free Palestine.
Assalamu alaikum. Peace and blessings be upon each and every one of you. My name is Rami Neshashibi, founding executive director of the Inner City Muslim Action Network here in Chicago, and a chapter in Atlanta. But I come here today not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, not as an independent, not as an affiliate of any political party. I come as a human being with the soul, the proud grandson of a Palestinian refugee that settled on the south side of Chicago, fleeing the Nakba in 1948 from a town in Jerusalem called Uncommitted. He came to the south side, a neighborhood a few miles south of where we're standing right now, called Inglewood. At the same time, black families fleeing the terror of the South, fleeing the horrific legacy of white supremacy in the South, looking for the same thing my grandfather was looking for, a reprieve from genocidal afflictions, to establish a life for his family. My grandfather, a 96-year-old man, called me yesterday. asking me, Rami, do you think there's hope? And you see, I'm an organizer at heart in this city. And we don't just believe in hope, we fight for hope every single day. We sit at a place in this convention hall 7 miles still from that neighborhood where the largest life expectancy gap, according to a New York University School of Medicine study conducted a few years ago, of 500 urban centers, determined that we are inhabiting the largest life expectancy gap in the country, in one of the wealthiest cities in this country. 32 years. What does that have to do with what we're talking about here? Everything. You see, 10 years after my grandfather settled in Inglewood, the Chicago Freedom Movement started to assemble, not only across the South, but of course here in a city like Chicago, because they knew, like in Selma, Chicago mattered. The issue of the beginning issues of blockbusting, redlining, restricted covenants, the ability to have a dignified trajectory, a quality of life. Before there was the Fair Housing Act, Chicago was the scene of organizing from across the country. And a man who we have rightfully been celebrating this last week, the great Reverend Jesse Jackson, was at the helm of much of this activity. And King came here in the summer of '66, taking on this issue. He spoke in July in Soldier Field, where there will be a festive celebration tonight. And he spoke powerfully. And a month later, he started marching into neighborhoods. Ones like the one that my mother grew up in, Marquette Park. And when he marched into those neighborhoods, he marched with brave, courageous souls who were willing to confront what King called some of the greatest horrors that he had ever seen, even a year after Selma. Some of the greatest hatred and hostility here in this city for people who just wanted a dignified trajectory, quality of life. There was a rabbi who I call the greatest civil rights rabbi many of you have never heard of from this city, by the name of Robert Marks. A dear friend and mentor who passed away a few years ago, who went on to found an organization here called the Jewish Council of Urban Affairs. Rabbi Marks, on August 5th, 1966, was assigned a position to be a quote-unquote neutral observer as King would march into Marquette Park with 700 other brave souls on that day. He was assigned and given that assignment by a congregation of synagogues across the Chicagoland area. But you see, Rabbi Marks had been with King a week earlier in Gage Park. And he's seen what had happened that day. He saw nuns spat upon. He saw rocks thrown upon little children who dared march with King. And that day he penned a 3-page letter that I maintain till this day is perhaps one of the most profound, lovingly agitational letters ever written by a faith leader to his community, or her community, or to their community. A letter that challenged his community in the most loving, affection way. To say that today, and in it he said, last week, as a neutral observer, I was on the wrong side of the street. Today, I will not be on the wrong side of the street. Today, there is no neutrality. Today, the same claims of neutrality are like the claims of neutrality made in mid-20th century Europe when our people were being marched into ovens. That story and King's legacy and Marx's legacy animated me as an organizer. And I shared that story with President Obama when he came in his last year of office to a mosque in Baltimore. And he asked me in that conversation, Rami, could I steal that story? Because I talked about how it animated me even in moments of despair
And I said, you are the president, you can do what you want. He took that story and integrated it into his last and final speech that he made at a faith gathering in the last few months of his presidency. And of course, did what Obama does, add a little Obama spice on top of it. Rabbi Marx's wife called me later and said, it's the first time my husband's legacy has been mentioned nationally by a president in tears. I'm raising that to you today to say that we're not naive as organizers. We know that power concedes nothing without a demand.
That's right, that's right.
We live and die by this slogan that is on that Fannie Lou Hamer quote, that we are not free until we are all free. But if you're from the south side of Chicago, you would be disingenuous if you could say that you did not, those of us who are sitting in the DNC, hearing another south side sister speak the words of hope and not move and be inspired the other night, hearing Michelle Obama's extraordinary testimony to her mother. She spoke of that familiar feeling that has been buried too deep and for too long, that contagious power of hope. We want to feel that with not just Michelle, but with people across this country, irrespective of party, that we can continue to fight for a more hopeful day. But you cannot do that along the same platform that denies, deprives, dismisses, and tries to continue to delete the voices and humanity of Palestinians. The elected representative from Georgia has sent her remarks to the officials inside the DNC. I've read them. Many have read them. There is a Palestinian American voice ready at this moment to be among the voices that can be lifted and honored so that the true feeling of hope can be, that we can be accessible to all of our communities here and across the globe. I am specifically turning to President Obama, and even more specifically to a Southsider who has a legacy here, Michelle Obama. Your words resonated with people across this country and across the globe. We are asking you to make that call, my sister, to allow the voice of a Palestinian to be heard before this DNC is closed, as a message to the world that your voice and your message applies to all of us, irrespective of background. That you can see the pain and suffering as Palestinians, as you see the pain and suffering of our precious Jewish babies, Muslim babies, Christian babies here and across the globe. Dr. Thaed, in closing, spoke of humiliation and the humiliating feeling of constantly being denied. The first time I was strip searched to my underwear with my brother was as an 8-year-old going into Jerusalem to visit my family. Every Palestinian knows the feeling of humiliation well. But we know, as all spiritual people, and as it says in our tradition, لَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that the inalienable and endowed dignity for every human being, the dignity that every human being deserves, does not come from structures or regimes or governments or parties. It comes from a greater power that nobody and nothing can deny. The 6-year-old child in Gaza who has lost everything and everyone, who may still be searching for his family in the rubble, who may be among the children, the highest percentage of pediatric amputees in the world. When a microphone is put in his face or her face and asked how you are doing, 9 times out of 10, before he says or she says anything, she begins with Alhamdulillah. All praises be to the Most High. That is dignity. And no one will take their dignity away. And no one needs to tell any Palestinian that if our voice is deprived and denied and deleted and dismissed tonight, it's not taking away from our dignity. Trust me. Our dignity is gained from those who continue the struggle. My dignity is gained from that 6-year-old Palestinian kid in Gaza who can still lift his head high and say, I'm a human being, no matter what your structures, no matter what your bombs. 7 atomic bombs have been dropped on us. The amount of 7 atomic bombs, American-made shrapnel that's embedded in the tissue of these little children, being extracted by pediatricians day in, day out, having to look at them. Their dignity is not deleted or dismissed or diminished in the least. It is all of us who have to decide, like Rabbi Marx decided on that day, August 50, 1966. What side of the street are we on? What side of the street are we on? There is only 2. There are those who will stand with the voices of conscience, with the voices of humanity, and those who will deprive, deny, delete, and negate that. I pray to the great God that created all of us and that we all will return to. And I call upon each and every one of you and anyone in any sphere of influence in this moment to allow that voice to be heard tonight, to allow it to be heard with absolute courage and conviction that, again, we are not free until we are all free. Peace and blessings be upon you. Let's sit down.
Next is, the next 2 speakers are Rabbi Elena Alpert and Rabbi Jason Kimmelman-Block.
I come here today not as an ally. I come here selfishly, not for some theoretical intermutuality, but for the practical and personal truth that the military-industrial complex's insatiable appetite for violence in the Middle East threatens the well-being of Palestinians and Jews everywhere. I come here because every day that our government greenlights the brazen ethnic cleansing of Gaza is one more day that the hostages' families are in anguish. A horrible thing happened on October 7th to many families, Jewish and non-Jewish. But bombing will not bring back those we've lost. And it will not free the hostages. And it certainly will not move us closer to a just peace. In the words of the Israeli left, Ein pitaron tzva'i, there is no military solution, not another bomb. I come here because every day that the United States enables the Netanyahu government's blatant disregard for international law, we are pushed farther and farther away from a just peace for all inhabitants of the Holy Land. May that just peace come soon. May we be blessed to help bring it closer. And I'll ask for an amen.
Hi everyone, Rabbi Jason Kimmelman-Block from Bend, New York, Jewish Action. There's been a lot of joy this week, and what I saw inside the arena were a broad range of voices raising the call to elect Kamala Harris as president and reject Trumpism and MAGA fascism once and for all. And I heard moderates make that message. I heard progressives give that message. And I also heard Republicans inside the arena give that message. We heard a powerful testimony from Hirsch's parents. And then we walked outside the arena, and I saw the pain and the heartbreak of my Arab and Palestinian friends who were denied the opportunity to be part of that tent, to be part of that broad coalition that says what needs to be done. That we're denied the opportunity to share the deep, deep pain. This is not a difficult ask to ask for a speaker. But I want to tell a story that's a little bit broader. And it's about human life, and it's about war. It's a story that Abraham Joshua Heschel told as he was speaking out against the war in Vietnam, which has been recalled many times in the lead up to this convention. He told a story about being a little child and learning with a teacher and studying from the Torah. And they were working through the Hebrew, and they were studying the story of the Akedah, of the binding of Isaac. That Abraham received this inexplicable call to sacrifice his son on an altar, and he heeded that call. They carried the wood, and Abraham tied his little child because of a voice that he thought was God that told him to destroy him. And at the point in the story where Abraham lifts up the knife, this young child, who would become a great, great rabbi, begins weeping and crying uncontrollably. And his teacher says, "My child, it's okay. Don't you know the end of this story? An angel comes and stays Abraham's hand, and all is okay in the end." And the child says, "Yes, but what if that angel was late? What if he came at the last possible second? What if something delayed him? That would have been the end for that child and for the whole story of an entire line of people." And the teacher replied, "Child, an angel cannot be late." And then Rabbi Heschel taught, an angel cannot be late, but human beings of flesh and blood can absolutely be too late. And we are already too late.
That's right. That's right.
For tens of thousands. But my prayer is that for the millions of Palestinians, of Israelis, of people across the region, that we end this war and make sure that we are not too late for them. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Reverend Tracy Blackman.
There's a West African proverb that says, until the lion tells the story, the hunter will always be the hero. I'm thinking of that proverb in this moment, and I'm reminded in 1999 in New York, when Amadou Diallo was shot 27 times in the hallway of his apartment building by New York City police. That his mother came here from the continent to claim his body because she did not want his flesh to remain in the states where his blood had been shed. She wrote a small book called My Heart is Across This Ocean, and one of the lines of that book that stays with me all times is when Katiadu Diallo says the only thing worse than the taking of her son's life was the taking of his story. I bring that up in this space because America has a habit of taking people's stories. We have a very short memory, and we also only speak of the time of the emergent crisis that we are facing right now. But the reality is that these cries have been happening for decades, and people's lives have been lost in the Middle East for decades, and we have been silent as a nation. And so now we have once again muted the story, and we are able to dismiss the pain because the lions have never gotten their chance to speak. What is important in this moment is not just that this is an election, and I want to confess that I have had all kinds of emotions, as I'm sure others have had, because we've never had a black woman get this far. And yet we cannot be so intoxicated with that we forget that those who sit at the head of empire are also a part of empire. And we will have to remain the people who are pushing and holding the administration accountable no matter what they look like. So in this moment, when we have been inundated with messages that this is different, that we are never going back, that we have a new way of seeing, that joy has returned, and that hope has returned, and that there is space for everyone. And it's not that I haven't heard the Palestinian name lifted in the convention center. I certainly have, but they have not been able to tell their own story. This is about an America where everybody's story should matter. That's what this is about. And it's not just about what happened on October 7th. It is about that. I grieve that. But it's also about what has been happening for decades that allow us to dehumanize others and fail to see that we are all connected. It is what happened to indigenous people of this land, that we placate with attributes to acknowledge that we have stolen land with no intention of returning it. It happened to black people who didn't ask to come here, but when we got here, learned our way, made our way, built our way, and as a result, we are sitting in a democratic process right now, which is only made possible because of black women in the back. And it has happened to our Palestinian brothers and sisters. So here's the deal as people of faith. Our role, our call, is to always challenge empire and to be where the pain of people is dwelling. I am calling on this convention to live up to who you say you are, and to allow Palestinians to tell the Palestinian story. one of the refrains of this convention that we have been chanting every night is that we won't go back. We won't go back, we say. Never going back, we say. I am suggesting that we must add to that, and we will not stay the same. We won't go back, but the voices that are crying out for justice will not be quiet, and we won't turn our heads, no matter who is occupying the White House. This is the moment. And if we all care that we get through this moment, it is a minimal ask that you let every story be heard. Amen.
Our final speakers will be doing a prayer, Rabbi Aryeh Bernstein and Rabbi Alana Albert.
I'm going to chant the traditional Jewish prayer for the dead. The Democratic Party is refusing to bear witness. Prayer is witness. And amidst all the champagne of the parties, we have to uphold our grief as well. The prayer is called El Malei Rachamim, Hebrew word Rachamim, translated as compassion, mercy. Really means womb, the same word in Arabic as in Hebrew. The word for compassion is the word for womb. God was full wombed, full of wombing compassion. The ability to continue to gestate, to nourish human beings. What would happen if we were all nourished and gestated? I'll chant it in the Hebrew and read the English. El Malei Rachamim שוכן במרמים המסנו חנוכנה על כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים ותות כזוהר קים עתירים את כל נשמות של קדושים תושבי הארץ הקדושה חפים מפשע אנשים, נשים וטף